Welcome to our short guide on labor standards, the key principles that safeguard the rights, safety, and well-being of workers across all industries. From ensuring fair wages to promoting safe working conditions, labor standards are essential for fostering a just and equitable workplace. Labor standards have a rich history, born out of the struggles and triumphs of workers who fought for their rights. Over the years, these standards have evolved to address the changing needs of our workforce, but their core purpose remains the same: to uphold dignity and fairness in the workplace. In this video, we'll explore key labor laws and regulations, along with the procedures to ensure compliance and protect worker rights. The Davis-Bacon Act, enacted in 1931 during the Great Depression, was designed to protect local wage standards by requiring contractors on federally funded construction projects with contracts $2,000 or above to pay their laborers and mechanics no less than the prevailing local wages and fringe benefits. This measure aimed to prevent contractors from using lower wage labor from outside the local area, a practice that had been driving down wages and undermining the economic well-being of local workers. Ensuring fair compensation, the act supported the local workforce and stabilized community wage standards. Additionally, it aimed to promote quality workmanship by preventing the underbidding of projects through the payment of substandard wages. Administered and enforced by the U.S. Department of Labor, it continues to serve as a cornerstone of fair labor practices in public construction projects. Further supporting the Davis-Bacon Act are several pivotal laws that enhance labor standards. The Copeland Act, the Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act, the Fair Labor Standards Act, and the Housing and Urban Development Act all complement the Davis-Bacon Act by establishing additional labor standards and protections for workers on federal and federally assisted construction projects. The Copeland Act, also known as the Anti-Kickback Act, was established in 1934 to prevent employers from demanding that workers return a portion of their wages, known as a kickback. The act requires contractors and subcontractors to submit weekly payroll reports to ensure compliance with wage regulations and to certify that employees are paid their full wages without any unauthorized deductions. The Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act of 1962 sets critical guidelines for work hours and safety conditions for laborers and mechanics involved in federal and federally assisted contracts. This act requires that workers receive overtime pay at 1.5 times their regular rate for any hours worked beyond the standard 40-hour workweek. Additionally, it encompasses health and safety regulations to promote and maintain safe working environments. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 establishes federal guidelines for minimum wage, overtime compensation, and child labor, ensuring employees earn at least the federal minimum wage and receive overtime at a rate of 1.5 times their regular pay for hours beyond 40 per week. It also mandates specific record-keeping practices, protects against wage discrimination based on sex, and sets standards for employing minors. The Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968 and its subsequent amendments focus on enhancing housing standards and expanding urban development opportunities across the United States. These laws work together to create a comprehensive framework that ensures fair wages, prevents exploitation, and promotes safety across federally funded construction projects. By understanding and complying with these standards, contractors not only adhere to legal requirements, but also contribute to ethical and equitable labor practices. Now that we've covered the key labor laws, let's see how these are applied practically. We'll start with the essentials of payroll forms and submissions, moving through to wage rates, compliance, and reporting. Each step ensures these standards are not just guidelines, but actionable measures that protect worker rights and promote fairness. Payroll forms, specifically the WH-347, are recommended, however. Any payroll form containing the same information and accompanied by the WH-348 Statement of Compliance is acceptable. Payrolls must be submitted weekly within 7 days after the work week and signed by an authorized individual. All workers on the job site must be listed on the payroll with their identification numbers and the appropriate job classification performed for that week. Overtime, compensation is required at a rate of 1.5 times the regular pay for any hours worked beyond 40 in a 7-day period. Wages must align with or surpass the rates specified in the contract's wage decision. Only deductions required by law or authorized by workers are allowed. Employees must be classified according to the applicable wage decision and compensated based on the work they perform. Any job classification not included in the wage decision must be requested and approved by the U.S. Department of Labor. The wage decision, along with posters and additional classifications, must be displayed on the job site. Failing to pay proper overtime could lead to liquidated damages of $32 per day for each worker per violation, and underpaid workers must be compensated accordingly. This rate is adjusted every year. Non-compliance with labor standards can lead to withheld payments and further liquidated damages. The general contractor must certify that all laborers and mechanics, including those employed by subcontractors, are paid the required hourly rates. Owners performing work on the project must be listed on the payroll, showing hours worked each day and the total hours for the week. Contract laborers must also be included on the payroll, detailing hours worked and an hourly rate that meets or exceeds the prescribed rate for their specific work classification. Contractors must be cleared through SAM prior to award by the governing body, and subcontractors must be cleared through SAM before subcontract execution. Both contracts should include labor standards provisions and applicable wage rates. The intent to use subcontractor form, which provides information for the financial interest report, must be completed and submitted as required. Section 3 requirements apply to contracts exceeding $100,000. This means reporting any new jobs, contracts, or training opportunities that arise. Subcontractors with contracts exceeding $100,000 have a similar obligation. The program encourages prime contractors and subcontractors alike to hire Section 3 residents when feasible. These measures are designed to boost local economic growth through federal project involvement. Section 3 reporting is done quarterly or at the end of the project, depending on which agency is being reported to. Following these guidelines ensures compliance with labor standards, workers' rights are protected, and project integrity is maintained. As we delve deeper into the intricacies of labor standards compliance, let's focus on the specific objectives and procedures that ensure these standards are met effectively. This next section will guide you through the essential steps and practices that not only fulfill legal requirements, but also uphold the integrity and fairness of every project. To successfully administer and enforce Davis-Bacon requirements while safeguarding workers' rights, the LSO must fulfill these 5 essential labor standard objectives. Apply Davis-Bacon requirements properly. Support grant recipient compliance with labor standards through education and technical assistance. Monitor grant recipient performance. Investigate probable violations and complaints of underpayment. Pursue debarment and other available sanctions against repeat labor standards violators. A construction project governed by federal labor standards must complete a series of specific steps before construction can commence. Designate a labor standards officer for the project. The LSO is responsible for the proper administration and enforcement of the federal labor standards provisions on contracts covered by Davis-Bacon requirements. Wage decisions, as defined by the U.S. Department of Labor, specify the minimum wage rates and fringe benefits for various construction work classifications. These classifications are organized into 4 categories: heavy, highway, building, and residential construction, each applicable to specific geographic areas and updated periodically. For all construction contracts exceeding $2,000 that fall under the Davis-Bacon and related acts, the Labor Standards Officer is required to retrieve the relevant wage decision from the Department of Labor's website. Each county's wage decisions must be reviewed to select the correct one for the project, detailing the types of work and their locations. The classifications encompass highway, including roads and runways, building such as structures and utilities, residential, covering houses and small apartments, and heavy, including large-scale projects like dams, major bridges, water and sewer improvement projects, and flood control projects. The Labor Standards Officer plays a crucial role in documenting and verifying wage decisions for construction projects, depending on the overseeing agency. The LSO must complete either the Labor Standards page of the Materials and Services Report, also known as the MSR in the TDA Go system, or the project's Financial Interest Report. For projects managed through the TDA Go system, the LSO needs to accurately document the wage decision on the Labor Standards page of the MSR. TDA staff will review this documentation to confirm the wage decision's appropriateness based on the project description. Approval of this decision must be secured prior to the bid opening date. Additionally, the Financial Interest Report must be submitted to GLO or other agencies involved before requesting grant funds, ensuring all financial disclosures are clear and compliance with regulatory requirements is maintained. This step is essential to uphold transparency and integrity in the use of grant funds. If the construction work is to be secured through competitive bidding, whether by sealed bids or small purchase procedures, the wage decision, along with any modifications, must be incorporated into the bid package. Ensure that the wage decision is current before the bid opening. For construction contracts over $2,000, the Labor Standards Officer must confirm that the wage decision is up to date 5 to 10 days before the bid opening, typically known as a 10-day call. Save a copy of the wage decision with the current date for your records and update the 10-day verification. If the wage decision changes within 5 to 10 days of the bid opening, revise the bid documents and issue an addendum to all bidders. If wage rates are modified between 0 to 4 days, cancel the bid opening, update the bid documents with the revised wage decision, and set a new bid opening date that allows sufficient time for all required bid notices. For projects under the GLO or other agencies, the same requirements apply, except that the wage decision should be submitted at the end of the project or upon request. Ensure that the wage decision and any modifications are included in the bid package if the construction work is procured through competitive bidding, whether by sealed bids or small purchase procurement. After the bid opening, the city or county must award the contract to the lowest responsible bidder during a council meeting or commissioners' court meeting. Each contract must incorporate Davis-Bacon labor standards clauses and a wage decision. These clauses should outline the contractor's responsibilities for Davis-Bacon wages, require adherence to labor standards, detail remedies for violations, such as withholding payments, and empower the labor standards officer to enforce federal labor standards. If a necessary job classification is missing from the wage decision, the LSO can request an additional classification in writing. The proposed classification must meet DOL regulations. It shouldn't duplicate existing classifications, should be used in the local construction industry, and the proposed wage rate should reasonably align with existing rates. The request will represent what the prime contractor or subcontractor wants to pay workers performing a particular set of duties. TDA, GLO, or the appropriate agency will review the request before forwarding it to the DOL for final approval. The LSO will be notified of the DOL's decision and given instructions for reconsideration if needed. The prime contractor must post the wage decision and the DOL Davis-Bacon poster titled Employee Rights under the Davis-Bacon Act at the job site where all workers can see it. If additional classifications are requested, those notices and wage decisions must also be posted. Before construction starts, the LSO should be involved in a pre-construction conference with the prime contractor, including the engineer or architect, subcontractors, city or county, and utility companies if applicable. This can be done via phone, video call, or in person. The conference should cover responsibilities on a federally funded project, applicable guidelines, construction details, project timeline, payment requirements, labor standards, and delivery of necessary documents like bonds, insurance certificates, wage decisions, and labor posters. The LSO must visit the project site, interview workers, and review payrolls to ensure labor standards are met. Weekly certified payroll reports for all prime and subcontractors must be completed and kept in local contract files from the start of construction until completion. The LSO must review these reports to ensure workers are classified correctly, payrolls are complete and signed, employees are paid the correct wage rates, and necessary certifications and authorizations are submitted. Upon completing the construction contract, a final inspection will be carried out to ensure that all work, including punch list items, meets the required standards. After the inspection, the final wage compliance report, or FWCR, must be completed, and any labor standards violations should be reported. The certificate of construction completion should then be generated, signed, and submitted to the appropriate agency. If underpayments are found, the employer must promptly pay wage restitution to the affected employees. The LSO will notify the prime contractor in writing, who has 30 days to correct the underpayments. The restitution amount is the difference between what was paid and what should have been paid. If overtime violations occur, additional restitution and possible fines may be required. Corrected payrolls must be submitted and reviewed by the LSO. If an affected worker can't be located, the restitution amount should be held in an escrow account for 3 years, after which any remaining funds will be sent to the appropriate agency. The prime contractor is responsible for all wage restitution, including for subcontractors. This ensures that every worker involved is fairly compensated, upholding the integrity and fairness crucial to the success of any project. And that's a wrap on our journey through the framework of labor standards for federally funded construction projects. We've navigated from the foundational Davis-Bacon Act to the steps required for compliance. If you have questions or need guidance on applying these standards, don't hesitate to reach out. Empower yourself to advocate for fair and safe working conditions. Stay informed and stay safe, and let's continue to build a fairer future together.